I want to talk today about Elizabeth Warren's plan for student loan debt. The main article that I read was in The Hill. So her plan, I'll throw the quote up here. Warren's plan would cancel up to 50,000 in debt for about 42 million Americans, 95% of those carrying student loan debt, and allow every American to attend a 2 or 4 year public college tuition free. She added that the entire cost of the plans would be covered by her proposed 2% annual tax on the families with 50 million or more, which she calls the ultra millionaire tax. And the next quote that I'll throw up here is Warren herself. Uh, we got into this crisis because state governments and the federal government decided that instead of treating higher education like our public school system, free and accessible to all Americans, they'd rather cut taxes for billionaires and giant corporations and offload the cost of higher education onto students and their families. The student debt crisis is the direct result of this failed experiment. So, I have a couple points that I can make about this in general, but do you have anything that you want to throw in? Anything you think about that plan?
I mean, selfishly, like I'm for it on the face because I also have student debt. I've seen some arguments for and against such programs, and at the end of the day, I can't fathom how decreasing the overall amount of debt that people owe is not a good thing for the American economy, is not a good thing for Americans in general, and potentially a good thing for the world. So I'm on board ostensibly. I'd be interested in seeing the details.
Right. Well, here, uh, the Massachusetts Democrats' proposal is the latest in a string of policy papers she has released over the past 9 months, including multiple proposals since she announced her presidential bid on New Year's Eve. Since then, she's proposed reforms to break up tech giants such as Facebook and Google. A universal pre-K program, she says, would also be paid for by the ultra-millionaire tax, and most recently a plan for to protect public lands, which I also think is great. And so the last thing I'll point out is the polling data is that she's tied for fourth, or at least it was 2 or 3 days ago when I was putting together my little note pamphlet here, my couple pages of notes. She was 7% support in Iowa and fourth in New Hampshire with 9%. So she's certainly not the front runner, and I don't think she's as good as Bernie Sanders. But I do like this policy. I wish that she would talk more about substantive policy changes on our military exploits in the world and the military industrial complex and our foreign policy and who we make deals with and all of those things. But on the face of it, in a vacuum, if we're not gonna talk about the entire, whether or not we think she's a good candidate based on the entire platform, point for point, I totally agree that they should cancel that debt. And a universal pre-K program that seems like an obvious step towards women's equality. Like that, I think that's kind of a necessary component, an equalizer that will be necessary to continue moving forward in that department. I may be wrong on that score, but it seems to me like the overwhelming beneficiaries of that policy change are going to be, of course, the kids, but the mothers who will more easily be able to join the workforce if they desire. What do you think about the tax, the ultra millionaire tax, where she's proposing 2% just right off the top of these millionaires, and that's how she's going to pay for these programs?
Immediately, my knee-jerk reaction is fuck them. I don't know that I'm really that concerned about a 2% tax on elitist assholes. I'm sure they'll QQ and cry, but if it's for the betterment of society, if it's for the betterment of the country, it's one of the ways that we can redistribute the wealth to raise the overall quality of life for most people. So don't really care. I think it's a good idea. We should maybe consider higher taxes. I wouldn't even care if we gave higher taxes to everyone if the end result was that everyone also had a better quality of life, easier access to things like food, housing, education, so on. Because at the end of the day, like, those things that really matter like that, that's the things that we spend our money on. That's where, a lot of my time at work goes into paying for those things. So if I didn't have to pay for those things, even though maybe I'll be making less, my money's going to go farther because I'm not paying back 50,000 in student loans, or I'm not paying 40, 50, 60% of my total income to my rent and things of that nature. So I support it.